be starting. But oh, hey,
Hey, we're live again.
We're live. It's been 1 month exactly since what the fuck? Since what the fuck?
Yeah.
Welcome
What the
back
fuck?
to the breakdown. Starts
Here we
now. Well, Rick, people are angry. Everyone's angry. There's a lot of anger.
I have spotted a bit of that anger out there in the wild. There's
a lot of rage.
It's real, and it's brutal, and it's deadly, and it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's clouding people's thinking, and we're talking rage on all sides, right? Like MAGA's still angry, don't even know why.
They never know why they're angry, but they always feel it.
They just wake up in the morning and they're like, there's something I should be angry about. What will it be? What?
And then they just the internet. I will attack them.
Basically,
but,
yeah.
No, it's it really is a moment where I think we need to, we've had a month to think about this a lot. We've done a lot of studying about it. We've done a lot of pondering it. And the good news, folks, I want to say this: you should all be watching. Pete Hegseth is the second appointee of Trump's that's going to go down in a ball of flames. He's not invulnerable. He's not immune to the gravity of politics, and he's not immune to disappointing his own people. I had a MAGA person today that I speak to once in a blue moon. He's like, I can't believe he put Rubio in there. It's so bad. He's such a cuck. He's such a regular guy. He's such a old Bush Republican, blah, blah, blah. They're mad about one of the guys that's going to get confirmed. They're mad about the guys who aren't going to get confirmed. They're mad about everything.
Yeah. And the thing about Trump is at this point, he's got to start doubting his own gravitas to be able to put in these ridiculous nominees and expect people to like just bend over and take it, because because that's how he got into office, right? By saying like, anything I want to do, I get to do. And now it's not happening. And so it's like you see that crack in the armor. And so I'm waiting for him to kind of start to lose his mind and that infighting to amp up.
It's already brewing up inside of MAGA world right now. It's already sort of, you can feel them seething a bit because like Breitbart and Fox and a bunch of these other right-wing and MAGA media outlets are like, Hegseth must win. You must not let the liberal system defeat him. And even Trump is telling Maggie Haberman and the New York Times, I don't really know if I like this guy or not. Maybe he's an embarrassment. It's just so beautiful. It's just so beautiful. And look, he's only number 2, guys, that's going to go down in a ball of flame. If we all do our job right, we can take out the unbelievably terrible Kash Patel, the unbelievably terrible RFK Jr., and the unbelievably terrible and national security risk Tulsi Gabbard. And that's just getting warmed up.
And it's getting warmed up. And here's the thing, like let's just say, even if he gets the people that he wants, they're going to piss him off within probably a month or two of them actually being in that office. So we're going to see the revolving door of chaos, which is perfect because that makes it like right for us to be able to actually build something and stop this onslaught before it takes over every cycle. Because I feel like right now, with everybody's anger and this kind of clouded thinking, is that nobody's able to think through clearly what the plan of attack is going to be able to stop all this. Like everybody's on the defensive. And I don't think we need to be on the defensive just yet. We still have a democracy right now.
I think we should look at the fragility of our democracy with this with the same seriousness. We should also examine the fragility of Trump's mental state, of the bag of rats that is his team are all infighting with each other, the unpopularity of his look. I saw some polling yesterday about Project 2025, not election polling, new polling, and it's deeply unpopular even among Republicans. And so they're going to try to implement Project 2025. They're going to try to go out there and do all the shit. like flood the zone with shit, as Steve Bannon says. And I think we have a better chance than people have estimated, and frankly, better than even I estimated a couple weeks ago, of causing some real friction and damage and delay of these things. Because folks, we don't need to delay this for 4 years. We need to hold them off for about 12 months, because at that point, the 2026 election is in full swing. And you're going to have a real hard time convincing Susan Collins to die on the hill of eliminating Social Security benefits for Elon Musk's Doge program.
Yeah, and I think because of that we're going to see the onslaught that we're going to see in January, February, March, because they know if they don't get it done right away, if they don't please their base, if they don't push those things through, they're going to risk not being able to do it at all, and then look like the fools that they are, that we know them to be. But Rick, I want to talk about the kind of worldwide drama that's happening right now before we get into a little bit more of what's happening here. Because we've got stuff going on in France, stuff going on in South Korea. Like, there's just this general turbulence right now. And I'm wondering how much of it is happening because people are seeing what feels to be a vacuum of power in the United States right now. It's kind of like we're in an anything goes kind of thing. What's your, because the South Korea thing just kind of, I was like, what the, but then the France thing, I was also like,
South Korea has only been an actual democracy since 1987, which is really hard for people to think about. It's really hard to believe that it's been a fully functioning democracy only since 1987. I have friends from Korea. I know Korea well. I understand it. And the fact that their democracy, when they had essentially their version of January 6th this week, where the president decided he would declare martial law based on some flimsy premise, and instead of cowering behind their desks or running away, South Korean legislators, although the parliament building was surrounded by police and special forces, they bum rushed the door. They jumped over fences. They had the people in the crowd lift them up over the fences around the Capitol so they could go in and cast a unanimous vote against martial law. Folks, it's pretty paternalistic sometimes how we treat America, like we're the only real democracy. We're the alpha. We've been around a while, but in South Korea, they showed you how to do it.
Well, part of it too is it's fresh for them having a democracy. To your point, it's fresh. They remember, they like it. They're like, this is good. Whereas I think for a lot of us, we've taken it for granted that we've had this democracy going for what we, in many people's minds, feels like forever. Like it could just be on autopilot. And so one of the guys live streamed being boosted over the fence.
I loved it, right? I mean, it was so good. It was so good to watch. I mean, it really was heartening to me. And it was so good to watch because I think we do live in this like really, we always feel like this hovering despair around us in this country right now. And watching these legislators go out there and say to Yoon Suk Yeol, no, we're not doing it this way. We have laws. We're a country of laws. This is how it's going to work. I found it really heartening. Now, look, I mean, in France, you've got a great disruption right now. The government has fallen. It is currently government-less, leader-less, so which is a very problematic moment for the second largest power in Europe and a nuclear nation. But I think you're going to see resilience there. They're going to hash this out. They're going to figure this out. And broadly in Europe, you see right now that they see that America is about to be taken back into Trump's hands. So today, the European Union and the European parts of NATO have come together to establish a new funding mechanism for Ukraine, so that we do not end up having Donald Trump say to Vladimir Putin, "Hey, roll the tanks, Vlad. We've cut him off," because that is Trump's plan. And so, I think in some ways, it's good to see these things. It's good to see South Korea do this. It's good to see Europe do this, viz. Ukraine. But it also tells you that they don't expect American leadership to be on the scene anymore.
It's actually a little frightening because Tucker Carlson was on the scene in Moscow doing a show there.
Look, the quarterly reports are due. and you only get your performance review done in person. They don't do it by Zoom. So, he had to be there.
And it's not a 360 review in Moscow. It's only going one way. It's infuriating to me that we're at this point where they're boldly just coming out and basically saying we're in Putin's hand. Like the fact that they are framing this now, that this is like, these are our friends. To me, that's insane. And the part of the reason I continue to follow Tucker Carlson and I continue to get his emails and his text messages, even though it sometimes will ruin my morning because I'll open it up and I'm look at it and I'm like, this motherfucker. Like, it's important to keep an eye on how they're trying to set a narrative and frame a narrative for their audience. Like, that to me is the only bonus of watching Fox News, of watching all this right-wing media, is to constantly be like, okay, I know what they're up to.
It's smart to know what your enemy is doing.
Yep.
And I do view them as an enemy of America. I do view Tucker Carlson as a unpaid servant of a foreign power. When he's in there in Russia saying, "Oh, Moscow is lovely and Putin is a great and inspired leader, and America are the warmongers who want to start a nuclear war," that's only coming from one place. That's coming from Russia. That's coming from the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. America has no desire to start a nuclear war. If we wanted to do that, we would have done it years ago. And we understand just how deadly it could be. Putin's the one who's playing like World War III bluff, games with us. But you've got Tucker Carlson over there in a terrorist state that on every single night of the week deliberately fires guided weapons into civilian targets in Ukraine, hospitals, schools, family apartment complexes, power stations. This is Tucker Carlson saying, I'm okay with Putin's genocide against the Ukrainian people. I'm fine with that because I'm here in Moscow to show my loyalty to my master, Vladimir Putin. It is important to watch these people, but I really do believe, especially in Tucker's case and the case of these people in America, these vloggers, like Tim Pool, Benny Johnson, Lauren Southern, Dave Rubin, who took hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars every single month from the Russians and knew what they were doing. They can deny it all they want, but the content of their work, hating Ukraine, praising Russia, seems to me to be a pretty clear indicator that they knew where the checks were coming from. But look, I mean, those people are out there in a major way. And I think we're going to see that they are shameless about it. Tucker is shameless about it. These other guys are shameless about it. Jack Posobiec and Dave Rubin and all these other guys, they don't care. They're on the other side. They've chosen the other side of the historic equation here in the Russia-Ukraine war.
They're shameless about it, but that doesn't mean we can't continue to shame them.
Correct.
It's important because that's how we remember who we are as a country, who we are as a democracy, that we don't stand for this. And I think the louder that we are about it right now, the more it will give pause to those, I want to say moderate Republicans, but I can't even call them moderate anymore. But those people who are now trying to protect their power and protect their position by playing along and playing the game. It's like, no, shame them, shame the relationships that they have with the people who are shamelessly trying to take down our democracy. We have an ad. I wanted to watch the one. Yeah, can we roll it?
Yes.
America's men and women in uniform need real leadership at the Pentagon. Character, courage, honor, experience. Those are what a real leader brings to the fight. Pete Hegseth isn't just unqualified to be Secretary of Defense. He's embarrassing, sick, struggles with alcohol, drunken rages in bars and strip clubs, fired from 2 veterans organizations for financial and personal misconduct. While at Fox, Hegseth paid off a woman after she reported he sexually assaulted her. Pete Hegseth's own mother calls him an abuser of women. These aren't the qualities of a leader. They're weaknesses for our enemies to exploit. Pete Hegseth isn't just unqualified. He isn't just unprepared. Pete Hegseth is downright dangerous for our troops. He's a risk America can't take.
And we all are already
Yeah, I was
seeing.
thinking about making that more delicate and subtle, but went right to it.
Well, his mom got right to it, so I feel like
The fact that he had to drag his mom onto Fox, where she desperately tried to walk it back, it was so ugly and pathetic and dumb. I'm just like, come on, dude.
and
Hold the-
embarrassing.
You
Like,
know it's over.
that's a level of embarrassment. It's like that's when you walk away, and that's the thing. This is why we know that these people have no regard whatsoever for America, because to be at the level where you're saying things like, I'm not going to drink, and hey mom, can you please come on
Please
Fox?
call the U.S. senators for me and tell them I'm not going to drink. You know, I started out in the reason I got my job at the Defense Department was because the nominee that the president had put forward, a guy named John Tower, turned out to be a heavy drinker, turned out to be a guy who misbehaved, like nowhere near, like 1/10 of that story is about Pete Hegseth. And ironically, Tower was actually qualified to take the job in terms of his knowledge and experience, but his character blew him up. Pete Hegseth lacks both the knowledge and experience and the character to hold the job. That's why, and folks, that ad you saw is part of Lincoln's going forward strategy on these appointees. We're going to make sure that the ones that we can help stop, we help stop. The ones we can't stop, we expose them for who they are. We talk about their agenda for Project 2025. We make sure the American people know who Donald Trump is pushing into senior government positions and the threat and the danger they pose to them.
Excellent. And I want to talk about distractions, because there have been quite a few distractions
Sure.
lately, and people have been what I like to call chasing the red herring down the abyss, like deep, deep
Right.
abyss.
Mm-hmm.
This Hunter Biden pardon that everybody lost. I kept checking Blue Sky and Twitter just to see if
Right.
I was like, oh, we're still talking about this. I'll come back later when we're
You
done.
know what? Somebody asked me, like, where's your statement about it? I'm like, I don't have a statement about it. You know what? I don't care. It is the idea that Joe Biden has some sort of moral obligation to let Donald Trump pardon his criminal associates and not pardon his son, who's being persecuted by the House, various House investigative committees and the Trump world. Look, optics or no, this didn't, this idea that Joe Biden, like, he destroyed his legacy and gave Trump open power no, he didn't. The idea that Donald Trump was going to give a shit about Joe Biden pardoning Hunter is ridiculous. He never cared a bit about it. He's going to pardon anybody he can. Remember, Donald Trump pardoned 6 separate people, all of whom had criminal exposure and could testify against him. Donald Trump is a mob boss. Joe Biden's a loving father. That's about where I left it. I mean, and I'm not arguing with the people about it, because you know what? It's dumb. It's a dumb issue. It's a distraction, as you point out correctly, Maya.
Well, yeah, and also I think the people who are like, Gavin Newsom came out and spoke about it. I'm like, of course, these are all people who want to run and want to be able to say, I have the moral high ground and say, look,
Right.
I spoke up against, regardless of whether it's Trump or Biden, I'm always going to speak out. And it's like, I get it. I get why they did. But we also have to play the game that we're in and understand that Trump is going to do what Trump is going to do. And we have to be incredibly cognizant of that right now and not allow ourselves to waste 2, 3, 4 days of strategizing, or 2 or 3, 4 days, because the uproar on that, when you have Idaho passing a abortion travel ban and setting up like there is so much that's getting missed right now because we're paying attention to all these other distractions that are happening. And so to me, anytime I see this craziness, I'm like, I want to know what's going on with the other hand. And and we're going to see a lot of this going into January. And we have to remember, we still have a democracy right now. There are still judges being, at the moment, there are still judges being appointed and nominated and pushed through. And so that's where we need to put our energy right now, and not in all this chaos and distraction.
That's exactly right. And the Idaho case is one you're going to see this sort of thing ramify out among states with Republican legislative supermajorities, because they also have a sort of vague suspicion or recognition that things are going to go off the rails with Trump. So they're racing for the finish line. They're trying to get as much of this done, as you pointed out, in the spring of this year, because by next year, people are going to be in the streets about it. And politically, it's going to be much more radioactive by the middle of next year, or the end of next year versus the end of this year.
Well, and people are already protesting right now. What I like to see is, so we know we had the SCOTUS hearing yesterday on the gender affirming care for trans youth. And you had people protesting today and staging protests in bathrooms at the Capitol to protest against the Nancy Mace stuff. And I like it because it's showing how it's done. Like, LGBTQ community has always been on the forefront of speaking up and out. And they're saying right now, we're going to be out and loud when we can be, because I do not know what those protests would look like after January 20th. I do not know if they will have that same right that they do now to be able to do that. And so I'm glad that people are showing us what it looks like now and saying, you know what, we're going to use this time wisely, because go ahead.
One really interesting observation I had today, and you just triggered this in my head. This isn't 300,000 people in pink pussy hats. These are people going into the faces and spaces of members of Congress, whom they have a right to address, by the way, and engaging with them. These members on the MAGA side, particularly now, they exist only in the social media bubble. So when you're in their face, when you're in their shot, when you're in their live stream, when you're in their feed, it disrupts and disturbs them in a way that I don't think they're really ready for emotionally or technically.
Well, they're taking away something from people. And this is why I think, you know, a lot of the lawyers are tying the Dobbs decision to this potential decision in the effect that it would have on the community. You're taking people to a point where they have nothing left to lose. And when you take people to a point where they have nothing left to lose, or at least they feel like they have nothing left to lose, you can better believe that they're going to be in your face and protesting about it, because this is about saving lives at the end of the day, but it's also about bodily autonomy. In both situations, we are supposed to be a government where we're allowed to make our own decisions about our health. This is not supposed to be a world, especially at this point now, Republicans, I don't even think they try to claim to be about small government anymore, except for DOGE, except for the new sort of department.
Believe me, the purpose of DOGE is not to cut spending. It's to reallocate it so that friends of Elon and friends of Vivek and the broligarchy get their slice, instead of, Granny's old enough, she can eat cat food. So.
Ding, 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 ding. I feel like that needs to be said again. It's not to cut spending. It's to what, Rick?
To reallocate that money to Elon and Vivek and their friends. This is
That's it.
A classic kleptocracy in action. This is precisely what happened after Boris Yeltsin took office in Russia, after the Cold War ended, and the oligarchs whacked up the country amongst themselves. They split up industries. They split up industry sectors. It's like, okay, you get the aluminum plants, and you get the steel mills, and you get the coal mines. And they whacked those things up, and they became ridiculously wealthy billionaires.
Yeah, and
these guys are
we
doing
can't
the same thing. This is a classic kleptocracy move, and the fact that they're disguising it in the rhetoric of smaller government is just one more proof that the Republican Party's brand, they still have the elephant logo and the brand, but it's not the same party anymore.
It's the Doge. It's like the Dogecoin. It's like the multi-level marketing scheme of Bitcoin.
Dollar store Bitcoin.
Which is soaring through the roof right now. And I actually asked a friend of mine who is an economist and a professor at University of Wisconsin about it. He's like, yeah, it's basically multi-level marketing. And I'm like, excellent. Okay, good to know. But this is the thing. Like, this is a point in our where I'm glad that you phrased it that way, as the reallocating of resources and the reallocating of America, because if people can look at it that way and understand that this is a very much a follow the money situation, then it makes sense why they're privatizing, like why they want to privatize the schools, or why they want to, do the voucher system, is because they want to line the pockets of their buddies. And I think if we speak about it in those terms more often, people will understand how much this is just a money grab. And speaking of money grabs, we got to talk about the UHC.
Oh my God.
That was
crazy story. I mean, crazy story at every level. And there's been a reaction to the killing of this guy, Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare, that my better angels are like, that's cruel, that's awful, that's so bad. And then I think, these people let people die all the time. These people make decisions every day that bankrupt families in this country. This is the company with the highest rejection for healthcare claims from its clients.
Way higher.
He was going in there to announce his $450 million in profit for the quarter, or the year, the quarter, I don't know which. And the black humor of this, of people saying, I'm sorry, my thoughts and prayers are out of network, etc. It is cruel. It is dark. But there is also something that I think this has got something indicative right now of the incredible anger in our culture.
Yep.
And the way that it's playing out on social media is fascinating to me, because there is brutal anger about these companies. If you wake anybody up out of a sound sleep and say, hey, would you rather be eaten by wild dogs or let your healthcare company run the country? They'd pick the wild dogs every time. But the social media reaction has been funny and sharp and ugly, and it's fascinating because it's largely the same across the platforms. It's Blue Sky, same kind of feeling as Twitter, same kind of feeling as Threads. It's dark. It is funny, guys. I mean, you got to say, even gallows humor is humor. But the idea that this guy is breezing into a triumphal board meeting and gets whacked by somebody who, from the early indications, there's something about a denied claim in this thing, because he wrote deny, defend, defer on the casings of the bullets. There's something here.
Yeah, and here's the thing: like, violence, never okay.
Nope.
It's never okay.
Nope.
But I think we have a tolerance for a sort of casual violence of the denied claim.
Mm-hmm.
We have that tolerance of people dying left and right. We're just used to it. What we're not used to is the more acute violence of an assassination on the streets of New York in broad daylight, right? And so I feel like there's been all of this rage that's been kind of pent up, possibly post the election, but even before.
But
It's coming out all at the same time, and it's galvanizing people in a way and bringing people together in a way, because I don't think there's a single one of us who hasn't had a phone call with an insurance company at some point in their lives where they've just been like, are you kidding me right now? And I can say I had healthcare in Argentina, right? There was universal healthcare in Argentina. I opted for private healthcare because you also have private healthcare in Argentina. And I was shocked to find out that everything's included. There's no extra. You can actually have plans that have included plastic surgery, where you get a surgery so there are different ways of doing things. I actually wrote an entire bit about universal healthcare after having been in Argentina, because I started to go to the emergency room too much, just because, it's like,
I mean, and that's the thing. And as somebody said today, look, these companies do not make money delivering positive health outcomes. They make money by denying access to positive health outcomes. And while you don't want to give everybody, lavish every single thing all the time for no purpose, they've become very competitive in the space of, they are rewarded on the stock market for cutting the services and availability of the products that their people that are paying them for those services and products. And so that reaction today on social media, I thought it was fascinating because again, the way it looked to me across the platforms was very similar. And it was also left and right. We're like, fuck this guy.
Oh no.
And
I'm
a little worried that there's some tolerance for the murder part. I don't like that very much, but I get the anger. I get where it's coming from.
Well, in that anger, we should look at that level of anger as a warning sign of what's to come, especially because if we look at it at the backdrop of the Affordable Care Act, and we think about the fact that a lot of the protections that we have now, a lot of the coverage that we have now, pre-existing conditions, things like that, are all tied to the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, as Republicans like to call it. And so this rage that we're seeing now, I can only imagine what it would look like in 5, 6, 7 months if they decide to somehow figure out a way to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. And I'm actually grateful that we have somebody who is forever online with us.
Yes.
Speak to the rage.
Talk about the rage inside the machine, Kate.
You know the rage.
Well, yeah. I have also been scrolling all day. I'm loving again, you have to laugh because what else is there to do? Thoughts and premiums, like, oh, sorry, bullets are a pre-existing condition.
It is, again, it's like, as I like to say, it's like even gallows humor is humor. And I think it's not weird. I think it's telling that people's creativity in the response to this is really striking. It's really intense.
Well, yeah, I mean, people are responding to it. I want to talk a little bit about that, the anger that people are feeling just about the material conditions around them that transcends party affiliation. And I think part of the reason why Democrats were not able to tap into these sort of passive media consumers is because Republicans have always been able to speak to that anger. They go, you're damn right, you should be angry. We're angry too. We're angry for you. And we're going to fight for you by blaming immigrants, poor people, gay people, trans people, whatever. So Democrats need to learn how to break through that way.
Right.
And meet people on their level and speak to them like that. Because this is, if anything is an example that you can reach people beyond party lines, it's this. It's people being partying in the streets because some CEO got assassinated.
Yeah, and that was my observation. I was talking when Maya and I were talking a minute ago. From what I could see, it's kind of an equal opportunity left and right hatred of these companies.
Absolutely.
Well, and so, I mean, it's corporate greed, right? And so, and this is the thing, there's a difference between corporations and then greedy corporations, right? Like you can have capitalism that's responsible, that leaves enough on the table so that everybody can eat. And then you have corporations that are like, no, we're going to take it all off the table and starve the people. And I think that's what we're seeing here, Kate. And so are you seeing, because I saw one person push back and everybody was like, really, you're going to shill for, and it's a pretty prominent person.
This is also, listen, you guys always bring me on here to talk about social media and young people and whatever. And this is that the kind of scolding that I saw come from some, legacy media types about the online reaction to this.
Right.
Is so such a distillation of the problem that Democrats have in media, which is this scolding, uncool, can't have any fun, that reputation. And, the Joe Rogan of it all and shaming people who go into those spaces.
Well, and also they're not hearing people, right? So people are validly angry at their insurance companies. And so what do they say? Like in therapy, the first thing you have to do is validate people's emotions and say like,
Mhm.
oh, I hear you. I understand that you're angry. Maybe this isn't the way that we should address it, by celebrating violence, but you know what? Here's a bill for you. Let me write up a bill. And so there just seems to be this kind of disconnect, Kate. Like, where is the conversation going now? Like, where do you see are there any young Democrats who are going, hey, like I'm wondering what the Maxwell Frosts of the world are saying about this? Like, what are the young folks? Are they tapped in?
I think most, at least the young people that we need to reach, not my peers like here in DC who do sleep, eat, breathe this for a living, but generally speaking, young people, their exposure to media is more background, it's more indirect. They don't have to seek out news. It comes to them through the kinds of media that they seek out, media that's entertaining and not what legacy media offers them. For a politician who really knows how to utilize this is AOC. She gets it. She's on her Instagram live all the time. She's answering questions. And that's why she had overlap with Trump voters. And by the way, she knew that. And then she took questions on her Instagram and said, if you voted for me and voted for Trump, I want to hear from you. Why did you do that? And
that's a great strategy.
Democrats need to get better at going into those spaces and not worrying about, this overly focus grouped backlash, fearing thing that we do. It makes us seem uncool. And
but also
if you Beyonce doesn't make you cool.
Well, I like what you're bringing up too about the AOC stuff, because it didn't allow her to fall back into sound bites, right? Like if she was listening and actually answering people's questions as opposed to listening and then spouting off talking points. And I think the rage that I feel like I'm seeing and that I often feel myself is like, oh, you know what the problem is. You see the problem, but then you gaslight the people into telling them what the problem is. And I think like because Republicans have managed to harness this rage of like actually seeing what they know what the problem is, and then they just lie about the problem, which is ultimately so much easier than I guess fixing the problem. And maybe that's the problem that Democrats have right now is like, we know what the problem is, but how do we fix it when there is all of this chaos and all of these competing interests? And so it becomes this like clusterfuck, for lack of a better word.
We're too intellectual. We try to explain to people, this is my postmortem. We try to explain to people why we get it. Inflation is bad, prices are high, but it's actually not as bad as you think because, in other industrialized nations, it's worse. And Kamala Harris started to do this about how corporations were price gouging, but they don't know how to bring it to people in a way that, is casual, in a way that's conversational and makes sense and doesn't talk down to them. And they know how to bring it to the mediums where gettable voters, these, not highly engaged people exist. And something that's driven me crazy, this is my soapbox, this huge migration of people that I've seen on like resist lib Twitter going, X Twitter has fallen to shit. It's all Nazis now. And I'm out of here. I'm leaving and I'm going to Blue Sky. If you want to get on Blue Sky, great. It's a new platform. It's growing. Go build a presence on there. But taking our ball and going home and saying like, I refuse to engage on this any further. That's what makes people not want to talk to you.
As I've said to a lot of people, I'm still on Twitter. I have taken it off my phone because it is sort of a sewage pipe for most of the content I'm getting on it. I still post on Twitter. I still engage on Twitter. I'm having more conversations on Blue Sky, but I'm a big believer. You never leave the beach. You never cede ground.
Yeah, I agree with that too. And I think a lot of the reasons why people don't like X anymore, and I'm one of the people who has very much made the leap to Blue Sky. It's my new favorite platform because of the discussions that are happening. But I do think it's important to put our voices out on X. That's what I'm realizing. And I think because on X you put something out, and when I go through the replies, it's like there's at least 2 or 3 replies that I have to use my deep breathing skills to go, don't respond to this troll. Don't click on this troll to see that this troll is a troll. It doesn't matter if this troll is a real troll, a bot farm, or if it's a woman in Kansas. It does not matter. Ignore that comment, engage with the comments that are helpful, and expand that conversation, because otherwise the record of I was talking to Jason Stanley yesterday.
Right.
Like 30 years from now, the record of the internet right now could be 90% in disinformation if we don't continue to put out good information. So I think even if it's copy paste, I think there needs to be a way to keep that good information on Twitter as much as possible right now.
Yeah, I try to post the like main headline content across the platforms right now. It's not easy. It's not always, fun. I assume at some point Sprout or whatever will allow you to do one post for all the platforms. But I also I don't want to give the fuckers the satisfaction of saying, oh, you drove me away.
No, never. Don't cede the ground. This is what establishment Democrats have done in so many apolitical spaces, is they've looked at them and gone, that is not a space that aligns with my values. And they will do it not because, the example of X allowing Nazis on, that's extreme. But let's talk about these podcasts. This is like the podcast election now. The Joe Rogans, the Andrew Schultz, the Nelk Boys, whatever. All of those spaces, we either don't have politicians that are willing to go in there because they're afraid of backlash, or if they are willing to go in there, they're not comfortable sitting with someone who disagrees with them and debating it and having casual conversation with them and being civil. Like, it doesn't have to be this sort of like non-productive debate show, like a Jubilee episode on YouTube. It has to be like Trump went on Theo Vaughn and like they talked, and he was like, oh, like, tell me about what it was like being addicted to cocaine. I never did that stuff, or, I've always been sober. And it made him look like a person.
Mm-hmm. And maybe that's what people need to be less afraid of on the Democratic side, is just looking like people. I think a lot of Democrats are like the, person who sat in the front of the class, perfectionist, like, I'm like raising my hand, it's me teach, and feel the need to have this very polished image. And I like what Mallory McMorrow in Michigan, she's also answering questions on her feed, and her feed's now filled with her answer questions. And it's not always about having to have the best answer for something. It's making an attempt to speak to it. And I think I think people are valuing that. And I don't want to be too hard on anybody right now either, because I recognize a lot of people are still coming out of the post-election stupor and that malaise. But I do think now is the time to act. It's been a month. So I'm kind of like, we got to put our big kid pants on and start having these conversations and putting people out there.
Absolutely.
And
And look, the legacy media, right now we have more people watching this stream than the average show on CNN. So the legacy media is a broken object right now. And so finding conversations in communities like this, we're honored to have you guys, including the trolls. Hi, guys. But I do think you have a million options now on how you get information and how you process it and how you share it. And you might as well be promiscuous about that. You might as well be spread it widely.
I was like, be a hoe about your info.
I'm really gonna get in trouble on this.
I'm gonna let you string out the metaphor. You'll be.
I'm gonna stop on my head.
It was great. Be a hoe about your info. I'm sorry, it rhymes.
My body count is. Anyway, well,
Oh,
Kate,
guys.
that was some good wisdom tonight. Maya, as always, we are delighted to be with everyone who's joined us tonight. 49,000 people on the stream right now. Y'all are amazing. We are so grateful. That's across different platforms, I think, but that is an amazing number. We're so grateful to everybody. I guess we're back next week, right? We're doing one more before the holiday?
Yeah, we'll do 2 more.
2 more before the holiday.
Actually, I meant to call you guys about this before the show, but I'm just going to announce it for you. Between now and our last show before Christmas, this is what happens when your producer's also on your show. The show before Christmas, which is on the 19th, we're going to take some questions and we'll do a little mailbag, have some fun with it.
I'm going to wear a fetching Christmas hat.
Yeah. Questions for Rick, questions for Maya, questions for me if you want. I'll come back. I'll be backstage anyway.
Yeah.
And we'll you can tweet them to us or email them to us, and I will make sure our social team gets out that email because I'm not 1,000% sure what it is.
Christmas question extravaganza.
Yeah. Love that. Oh, that's what we're calling it. The extravaganza.
Christmas extravaganza.
Yes. Please ask me questions about
ice skating rink for this.
Yeah. And I'll take recipe questions for the food that I'm going to eat to sustain me through January, as well as anything about my cold plunges. I'm doing cold plunges now, y'all. That's a part of my self-care routine. And so sometimes you got to shock the system online. That is what I'm doing. Because then,
if you are someone who enjoys cold plunges and you are in the wellness space online, watch your rabbit holes.
Okay. Yes.
Don't drink raw milk.
We actually, you know what, we're supposed to talk about that, Kate, tonight, and I forgot to mention that because I followed a lot of these wellness influencers and saw them.
Watch your rabbit holes.
The unhinged part of we've got a lot of metaphors going on tonight. Rick can't don't fall down that yes, don't. The advice is I'm not gonna
Seriously.
There is
keep raw milk out of all of your holes.
There is something to be said for approaching life in a way that's healthy. There's another thing to be said to fall prey to the pseudoscience that a lot of these wellness influencers are selling. And I think what happens is people are so angry and sad and depressed that they go looking for answers. And if our legislators, if our politicians are not going to respond to the needs of the people and actually fix these problems, people turn to wellness influencers and are like, maybe raw milk will actually make me feel better. And it's like, no, get involved with your freaking local politics, people, and we can actually make real differences so you don't have to drink raw milk. That's disgusting.
Y'all,
okay.
I'm the most agriculturally oriented of the three of us by a very long stretch. Don't drink raw milk, people. Unless you want to get Campylobacter or Clostridium. I mean, there's a million different things you can get from drinking raw milk. You know why farmers don't drink raw milk? Because they know. Right. Unbelievable. But,
Actually, we should just turn this into a wellness podcast. Maybe that's.
You know what?
I don't want to take us like too far down something before we wrap up, but that is a big reason. The modern news consumer isn't seeking out stuff that they should know. They're seeking out stuff that's useful, interesting, and fun, something that's going to help them improve their life. That's why a lot of people gravitate toward, figures like the guests on Joe Rogan's podcast, like David Goggins is this like big like fitness influencer guy.
And I've read David Goggins' book. I'm telling you, I was ripe for falling down that rabbit hole. David Goggins, Tom Bilyeu, like all these guys, because they do speak to that sort of ethos of accountability but there's certain things that work on a personal level that maybe don't work on a macro level. But the thing is, they're not going to fix your life. And I think a lot of people turn to these influencers because they're like, hey, Goggins fix my life, as opposed to looking to what actually should be done to fix things.
Exactly.
It's like Band-Aids.
Right. And even if David Goggins like did fix your life, like I'm not deeply familiar with his stuff, but it seems that he's just like really into like discipline and fitness.
Mm-hmm.
The point is that young men seek out figures like that to influence them, and those figures are going on, you know, manosphere podcasts. So men tune into these manosphere podcasts, and then the hosts of these
it's a place where young men it's a place where young men do not hear things like, girls are so much smarter than you, you're badly behaved, you have ADD, you're awful, you're privileged from the start, all those things. They look for a place, true or not about those other assertions, they look for a place where they can get validation like that. And the right-wing media infrastructure is providing it for a generation of these kids. We really got to pay attention to it. It is a serious, and the Democrats come across as like lectury and a bit shrill and a bit preachy. That ain't what a young man wants to hear.
No, and even for young women, like I think if I could have changed one thing that wouldn't have fixed the election, but it just like would have been something that I would have done, is that if I were on Kamala Harris's communications team, her Call Her Daddy interview, which is going into one of those spaces that's apolitical and friendly and going after a group that you need help with, which is like young, non-engaged
young
women.
voters.
Yeah. It was very manicured. It was definitely, you need to go into spaces that are not totally curated by your comms director. Kamala Harris is like obviously a cool, fun woman from what I can see. And she should have been on with Alex Cooper talking like in her like Lululemon set, talking about like her workout routine and her favorite smoothie. And she could slide her policy positions in there the same way that Trump did on 3 Hours of Rogan. But
Now,
it would have made her more
3 hours. How is that still for 3 hours of Joe Rogan? I can't even contemplate. Hey, we did get that email, folks. If you're going to send us questions for the Christmas Spectacular, the Yule-tacular show, it's The Breakdown at lincolnproject.us. That's The Breakdown at lincolnproject.us.
Send us your questions. And I think Kamala Harris, we should try to get her on here, but I feel like Kamala Harris could have gone on all of the podcasts.
She's not busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, forget about her. Like at the time, like I think Tim Walz was super underutilized in those like predominantly male spaces. His whole thing was that he was great off a prompter, and he got put on a prompter and sent to do rallies, which
less
get in those states, but
or less catchy than the few times they let him talk about like fixing a transmission or whatever.
Yeah, which was fun.
Let him go out there and be a positive role model for young men. Like we need that, and we need men who are comfortable going into spaces that have this like manosphere aspect and sitting down for those conversations with someone who maybe has like heterodox views on, or doesn't agree with the party platform. Don't always go to friendly.
I think that one of the things that scared them off of the manosphere stuff is it's not all Nick Fuentes, guys. It's not all, the weirdos. There are a lot of very legitimate questions and desires of young men in particular to find context in this world. They're struggling with it. And if only one side is giving it to them, they're going to give it to them with a big dose of their politics in it. So that's a question I think a lot about lately. Like, how do you communicate those things effectively? How do you get people out of those? God, rabbit holes is the word of the night tonight. But how do you get people out of those rabbit holes, out of those things that are harmful or dangerous or even just unproductive?
I think through community, and I think people feel so disconnected right now. And I think that's post-pandemic, but I also, people now work from home, and the third spaces have disappeared in many ways. And so the only third spaces that truly exist right now are gyms, CrossFit spaces. And so I think that's part of the reason why they find community there. I mean, I'm a gym rat. So I see them. I know what it's like, and that's where they find community. And so in order for us to create a community where they're not susceptible to being pulled into that, we have to do that in our equivalent spaces. Or I guess we need more Democrats in gyms. I don't know what the answer is, but we definitely have a lot to reckon with. I saw somebody in the chat say I was covering for the racism and sexism of the campaign. No, the hell of that part of the campaign. And it's like, are you kidding me? I'm like, I'm a Black woman in America. That's like to me, I'm like, talking about racism and sexism as being an issue is like me going outside and saying the sky is blue.
Well, look, there's a bright object in the sky every morning.
I'm like, of course racism and sexism was a factor. I would never in a million years pretend that it wasn't. And so, but what we do need to do is talk about the variables that we can control. I can't make America less racist. I can't make America less sexist, right? We tried all the DEI training. That clearly didn't work. It was shown to not actually be effective. So in order to meet America where it's at,
not only did it not work,
you got to go to the gym.
Republicans a weapon. So
we got a lot of figuring out to do.
We got a lot of work
to do it together, y'all.
Well, I want to just thank the Breakdown audience for sticking with us, and the audience still kept growing. Yes. We've got almost 58,000 viewers watching the various streams right now. Guys, we are really grateful. It's been a full hour, and I hope you've enjoyed the conversation. I certainly have. And I guess we'll see you guys next week. Same time, same channel.
Same bat channel.
Same bat channel. Good night, guys.